If you rent in Ontario or you own a rental property in Ontario, you cannot ignore this. The provincial government just passed Bill 60, and it completely changes how fast tenants can be evicted, what landlords have to pay when they move back into their own units, and how much time people have to fight a decision. This is the one you've seen all over the news with protests at Queen's Park and Doug Ford telling a protester to go find a job. That's the bill. So today I'm going to break down in plain English what it actually means for tenants, landlords, and the rental market moving forward. This isn't a pro-tenant or a pro-landlord rant. This is going to be more of a reality check so you can actually plan ahead instead of getting blindsided. So, what is Bill 60? The official name is actually Fighting Delays Building Faster Act 2025. And it's a big bill that touches on housing, infrastructure, and planning, all sorts of that kind of stuff. But the part that has everyone fired up is Schedule 12, which changes the Residential Tenancies Act and how the Landlord and Tenant Board works. So the government's reasoning is quite simple. They're saying the system is backed up, good landlords and good tenants are stuck in limbo, and we need to speed things up and unlock more rental supply. The tenants' right groups, they're saying the opposite. So they're saying this is going to mean faster evictions, weaker protections, and more people pushed into homelessness. So let's walk through the actual changes, and I will try to avoid getting yelled at in the comments. So the big change, number one, is going from 14 days to 7 days for unpaid rent. So what it means is if you fall behind on rent, your grace period is basically cut in half now. So up until now, if you missed rent, the landlord served you that N4 notice, and you had 14 days to catch up before they can file a eviction application. Now, under Bill 60, that goes down to 7 days. So from the government side, they're saying, hey, we're targeting chronic non-payers and speeding up a system with a huge backlog. From the tenant side, especially lower income renters, that's a lot less time between I'm a bit behind and now I'm in a legal process that I might not get out of. So I see both sides here. The public will always want to protect the tenants because they see landlords as rich and greedy. But the truth isn't really like that. In my experience, most landlords, they don't have big portfolios. They aren't making much money after maintenance, carrying costs, mortgage costs, and tenants refusing to pay rent at times. And so if they can't get the rent payment, the repercussions fall on them. The missed payments. They get threatening letters from their mortgage lender because they have to pay. And so the weight of the homelessness for tenants who can't pay their bills, it shouldn't necessarily fall on the landlords, in my opinion. It should fall on the government to help their citizens. I don't think it's a private matter. You can't expect a landlord to get financially wrecked because a tenant refuses to pay. So you break your terms on a car purchase, they take the car. Same thing with the house if you're renting it. So I don't think it should be on the landlord to provide free housing and shelter. That isn't their problem. That's not what they signed up for. Now, change number 2 is if an order gets made against you, you used to have 30 days to ask for review and appeal that decision. Under Bill 60, that goes down to 15 days, and not 15 business days, 15 days total. So if a tenant were to get this order, they would have to, 1, receive it, 2, they would have to actually understand what it says. They might have to find a legal clinic or a lawyer to help them. They would have to pull their documents together and file for a review. And so advocacy groups are saying this means more evictions becoming final before tenants even understand what hit them. So landlords, on the other hand, they're finally getting a decision that doesn't sit in limbo for months. So I can see this being a tight window for some tenants and possibly being problematic. Now, change number 3 is more technical, but it might be the most brutal one for struggling tenants. So historically, if a landlord took you, to court for unpaid rent, you could show up and say, yes, I withheld rent, but the ceiling's been leaking for 6 months, or the heat doesn't work and I've been harassed constantly by my landlord. And you could raise those maintenance or those bad faith issues as part of your defense, as long as you gave notice properly. Now, Bill 60 actually flips that. So under the new rules, tenants can't raise new issues about repair problems, harassment, at a rent arrears hearing unless they pay 50% of the rent that they owe to the landlord. So for a lot of people that are in financial trouble, that could be a pretty big deal. This is why tenants' lawyers, and the United Way are saying that this will tilt the playing field heavily towards landlords and keep people in unsafe or badly maintained units. Now, change number 4 is all about those landlord's own use evictions, the classic, I need the unit for myself or a family member, so you need to get out situations. And right now, in most cases, landlords, and they owe the tenant 1 month's rent and compensation for that no-fault eviction. Under Bill 60, there's now a path where landlords can avoid paying that 1 month. If they give 120 days notice, they can evict for personal use without the mandatory 1 month rent compensation. So landlords who genuinely want a unit back for themselves or their family, they're obviously going to love this. It's one less cost on top of already paying, their mortgages and property taxes. Tenants are probably terrified because that 1 month compensation, it often pays for a part of the first or last month's rent on a new place. So the concern is taking that away, has people lean on their friends, right, or shelters if they can't find something in time. And change number 5 is more behind the scenes, but it matters, is that Bill 60 gives the province power to define what persistent failure to pay rent on time actually means, and to set rules on when that can be used as a reason to evict you. So instead of just, you missed this month, we're moving into, you've been late X times in this amount of months, that's enough to evict. On top of that, Bill 60, it limits the court's ability to review, delay, or overturn eviction orders. And it adds more enforcement resources. So enforcement to get you out can happen faster. So the government and groups like the Toronto Real Estate Board, they are framing this as clearing out bad actors and restoring confidence so more landlords actually put their units on the market and people will actually want to invest. Tenant groups see it as, well, we're speeding up the conveyor belt of late payments to getting them into hearings, getting them to evicted, and that this will just create a housing crisis. And both can be true at the same time. So for small landlords, faster action on non-payment, less time waiting months or years for a hearing, potentially less cost when they legitimately need a unit back for their family. These are all pretty big wins. For tenants, it's mostly negative, especially lower income, newcomers, single parents, people with unstable income. They're going to have less time to recover if they have a bad month. They're going to have less time to appeal a decision, and they're going to have less ability to bring up repair issues if they're behind on rent. So there's going to be less financial help if you get pushed out for your landlord's personal use as well. So from a market perspective, you might see a slight increase in eviction filings and more pressure on shelters or family couches. In the medium length kind of view, I would say some landlords who are scared of how things were going in Ontario, they might either enter the market again and start renting to people, which could add a bit of rental supply. And long term, if the perception becomes tenants have little protection, that can create its own instability and risk as well. But essentially, Bill 60 is the government betting that speeding up evictions and restoring landlord confidence will unlock vacant units, it will boost supply enough to justify the risk. But a ton of housing experts and nonprofits and even city councillors are saying you don't keep people housed by making it easier to lose their homes, especially while we wait for new construction to show up, which seemingly isn't. So both sides agree we need more homes. They completely disagree on whether Bill 60 gets us there. So you need to understand the new rules so you can protect yourself and make smart decisions. Until next time, thanks for watching.